Good morning, and God bless. This is another book from Context is Everything Media Network, Healing the Child Within, 1984 Wisdom. Chapter 12 continued. Chapter 12 entitled, Continuing to Grieve, Risking, Sharing, and Telling Our Story. You can watch the previous video here and watch now, or just watch now. Protecting our parents, a block to grieving. In the previous chapter, I listed 6 ways that we may use to avoid the pain of grieving. Denying our loss, intellectualizing about it, stuffing our feelings, being macho, using alcohol or drugs, and prolonged attempting to get the lost object back. In further discussing anger, we can now describe another block to grieving, that of protecting our parents and other parent and authority figures from our anger. Before and during grieving and discovering our child within, we may sense, believe, or fear that if we get angry at our parents, it will not be appropriate, or that something bad will happen. This belief and fear is perhaps related in part to the don't talk, don't trust, don't feel rule described in this book and elsewhere. In Table 12 below, I listed 9 ways that we as children and adults tend to protect our parents from our anger. The first way is by outright denial. We may say something like, "Oh, my childhood was fine," or "I had a normal childhood." Such was their trauma that many adult children of alcoholic, troubled, or dysfunctional families cannot remember up to 75% of their childhood experiences. In my clinical experience, however, when working in recovery, most adult children are able to work through the denial and gradually uncover their ungrieved losses or traumas and work through them. Hearing others' stories in group therapy, Hearing others' stories in group therapy, ACOAs, self-help meetings, and elsewhere is a help in identifying and recognizing what happened to us. We can then begin to mobilize our grieving, which includes getting angry. Table 12. Answers, approaches, and strategies often used to protect our parents, thus blocking healing. The category, outright denial. A quote that is frequently related with outright denial: "My childhood was fine." It might have been. Category 2, appeasing. Yes, but detaching from the feelings. A quote that is frequently related to appeasing is, "It happened, but they did their best," which is oftentimes true. Category 3, viewing pain of the trauma as a fantasy. And the quote related to viewing pain of the trauma as a fantasy is, quote related is, "It really didn't happen that way." Fourth commandment. And the quote is, with this category, is, "God will be angry at me if I'm angry at my parents. It's not right." Number 5, unconscious fear of rejection. The quote is, "If I express my rage, they won't love me." Number 6, fear of the unknown, and the quote is, "Something really bad will happen. I might hurt someone, or they might hurt me." Number 7, accepting the blame. I'm the bad one. Number 8, forgiving the parents. I'll just forgive them, or I've already forgiven them. Number 9, attacking the person who suggested doing recovery work. You're bad for suggesting that I express my hurt and rage or that my parents could have been bad. I think that in some cases this is valid advice, and in some cases your parents probably did a good job. But in some cases, this might be valid. But in a lot of cases, your parents might have done a good job. The second answer, approach or strategy to protecting our parents, is by taking an appeasing attitude, such as, yes, my childhood may have been somewhat bad, but my parents did the best they could. Doing so is often the way that we detach from our feelings. Assuming such a why bother stance prevents us from beginning necessary grief work in getting free of our suffering. Next is viewing the pain of our loss or trauma as being a fantasy. Work in psychoanalysis and psychoanalytically oriented psychotherapy. The analyst or therapist may suggest or imply that if a trauma happened to us, we never can remember it the way that it actually happened, with the implication that it is a fantasy. Compounding the wound, this once again individuates the pain of our child within. We end up concluding something like, it really didn't happen that way. In whatever method of therapy or counseling we may be exhorted to, admit that our families are now groundless or defiance no longer necessary, and our need for acceptance long since met by therapist, counselor, or general therapy group. We may also be told that while we may hate our parents, we also love them, and that they did wrong, and that what they did wrong was done only out of love. Miller says, the adult patient knows all this, but he is glad to hear it again because it helps him once more deny, pacify, and control the child within him who has just begun to cry. In this way, the therapist or the group or he himself will talk to the child out of this silly feeling because they are no longer appropriate in the present situation, although still intense, a process that could have produced positive results, namely the awakening and maturation of the child's true self, will be undermined by a method of treatment that refuses to offer support for the angry child. To get free from mistreatment, we usually need to get angry. The next way of blocking our anger is by the fourth commandment, which says, honor thy father and thy mother, that their days may be long upon the land which our Lord thy God given thee. That's King James Version, Exodus 20:12. It is difficult to decipher or interpret exactly what the word honor means in this context. Over the centuries, however, it has been interpreted by most parents to mean no back talk. And other stifling messages to the children. We may conclude from this fourth commandment something like, God will be angry at me if I get angry at my parents. It just isn't right. Or, I will be an evil or bad person if I get angry at them. Most organized religions around the world have similar exhortations, which tend to stifle our child within and our ability to be real and to work through our losses in a healthy manner. A fifth way of avoiding our anger and grieving by protecting our parents is by being afraid of rejection by them. We may consider, think, or say something like, if I express my rage, they won't love me. or they may treat me like a bad little boy or girl again. This is a genuine fear that needs to be expressed when it comes into our awareness. A sixth way of being fearful of the unknown, or fear of expressing feelings. We may say or think, something really bad will happen. I might get hurt, or they might hurt me. This is another genuine fear that we may need to express in recovery. We may also accept the blame unto ourselves, saying, I'm the bad one. Many people avoid their anger and their grief by simply forgiving their parents. Assuming that forgiveness is an easy act, they say, I'll just forgive them. Or often more stifling to their true self, I've already forgiven them. However, most people who say this have not forgiven completely, since forgiveness is a process that is analogous to, if not in large part identical to, the grieving process. A final method of protecting our parents is by attacking the person who suggests that we may need to do recovery work, especially any work that might involve expressing anger at or blaming our parents. We may say or think something like, you are bad for suggesting such a thing, or how dare you suggest that my parents could have been bad. In one or in a combination of these ways, we protect our parents from our hurt, anger, and rage. And by doing so, we stifle our true self and block our ability to recover from needless suffering. However, we are now armed with the knowledge of just these blocks. Now, when we start to use them in any way, perhaps unknowingly, to impede or grieving, we can begin to let go of them when we are ready. Expressing our anger. New heading. We are learning that in healing our child within, it is appropriate and healthy to become aware of and to express our anger. It is becoming clearer to us that there are some people who are able to listen to our anger and to help us process it. These are the safe and supportive people that I have mentioned: therapists, counselors, sponsors, therapy groups, and self-help group members, and trusted friends. By contrast, there are other people who, for one reason or another, are unable to tolerate or to hear our anger. These may include our parents and others who may in some way remind us of our parents. If we express ourselves the way we need to directly to the parent or other person in question, it is unlikely that a healing experience will be completed. The person may well not understand what we are trying to say or what we are trying to do, or they may reject our expression, our offering to risk ourselves, and we may feel confused, hurt, powerless again. While it would be cathartic if we could ventilate our anger to these people, doing so would likely not be in our best interest. It might even end up being self-destructive because they have not healed their child within. They are generally unable to be a part of the safe and supportive healing of another. However, we can learn to set limits with these people so that they do not continue to mistreat us. We set limits both with firmness and with love. We do so not with aggressiveness, but with assertiveness. While it is usually helpful to eventually make peace with and through the grieving and forgiveness process, to forgive our parents and others who have mistreated us, it is important that we not rush or hasten this process. There are some therapists and counselors who may insist on making reconciliation with our parents an immediate or ultimate goal of therapy. but premature efforts in this direction can actually block discovering and healing our child within. It is best that we take our time. And even if we work for a long time to discover and heal our child within, we may not be able to heal our differences with our parents. We come to the realization that we cannot fix them. They are the way they are, and nothing that we can do will change that. And so we let go. For some people whose parents or others, such as an actively alcoholic, violent, or otherwise abusive person, are toxic to them, it may be helpful to separate from them for a few months to a year or more. Such a separation or detoxification period provides a space and a peace that will allow us to begin to discover and heal our child within. Further principles. The more we were hurt by the lost object or even or event that we grieve, the more anger we generally have. And even if we had a fairly healthy relationship with the lost object, we can still get angry at it for leaving us helpless and deprived. We may also get angry at others, including those we believe in some way were responsible for the loss, and at anyone who is not suffering as we are. Finally, we may get angry at having to pay for counseling and even at our counselors or therapists for pushing us to do our grief work. Eventually, after we have worked through our anger and rest of our grieving, we let go of our anger and our suffering. We come to a point where we have had enough. That's it. Thank you. Have a good day. That's chapter 12. God bless. Goodbye.